Ross and Marshall Thurber's Red Notice should work perfectly on paper. It's got amazingly star-studded cast traveling all over the world to beautiful places on a treasure hunt that could be straight out of an Indiana Jones movie. So how could it go wrong? Well, according to critics, there's a lot of ways. Keep watching to find out why Red Notice flopped so badly. Red Notice was a highly anticipated movie as it had what seemed to be a perfect cast, consisting of The Rock, Ryan Gosling, and Gal Gadot. So how did this film not live up to its big expectations? Well, for starters, one of the critiques was that director Ross and Marshall Thurber and everyone involved apparently forgot something called personality. The action comedy had been compared to being processed by a machine, a product for a content algorithm instead of anything approaching artistic intent or even an honest desire to entertain. And while there have been plenty of quality blockbusters produced by the Hollywood machine, it seems the film industry is steadily reaching the point where the human element is completely drained from them and are being produced as fast as fast food french fries. In fact, when the poster for Red Notice was released, most people title it as photoshopped and bland, but little did they know how much it actually captured the movie. Thurber, who's also the director of Central Intelligence and Skyscraper, reunites with his inspirer, Dwayne Johnson, who plays the FBI's top profiler, John Hartley. The film opens up with an inserted info dump about 3 convented eggs that were once the property of Cleopatra. Only 2 have been discovered, turning the missing golden egg into a holy grail for treasure hunters, especially for one of the world's most notorious criminals in Nolan Booth, who's played by Ryan Reynolds himself. In the film's relatively effective opening sequence, Hartley catches Booth trying to steal one of the eggs, turning the two into the comedic duo for the rest of the film, or also known as the muscle guy and fast talker. Together, they battle the authorities, a few bad guys, and another criminal mastermind nicknamed the Bishop, who is played by Gal Gadot, as they travel around the world trying to obtain all 3 eggs and sell them to the highest bidder. Movies such as Raiders of the Lost Ark and National Treasure seem to be the clear inspirations on Red Notice, but to say this movie lacks the aspect of great action and adventure like its iconic predecessors would be an understatement. Thurber's direction seems to have been to put simply Reynolds, Johnson, and Gadot on camera and allow their screen presence and familiar techniques to carry the story. Many have noticed Johnson to be stiff, as he somehow always seems to be playing the hero in every film he's in, and it looks like he's growing to be a bit tired of that. Reynolds, however, makes out a little better. However, you can almost see him growing weary of his attempts at witty shticks, as more of his attempts at humor thud more than usual. It feels like everyone thought casting would be all it took to make Red Notice charming, and then forgot to give their actors actually charming things to do. Many have begun to realize that Netflix is increasingly producing products that are meant to be watched with a phone in your hand, and Red Notice is a great example of that. The film's budget was $200 million, and it seems as though almost none of that fortune was spent on anything that retains a human touch, which essentially makes it the iPhone app of action movies. However, while there are some truly funny and yet somehow predictable twists, there's almost no real story, and certainly not a memorable one. And the settings, while often very beautiful, somehow lack personality as well. Some may argue that even the title sounds like something grabbed out of an action movie screenwriter program. Overall, so much money and so much charm went into Red Notice, and yet it adds up to be very little. However, despite the movie being a big flop, given how it ended, the biggest question fans are likely to have after watching the movie is whether Netflix is working on a sequel. For those who have seen Red Notice, it clearly left the door open for the franchise to continue via the mysterious heist that has brought the 3 together, but will a sequel actually happen? Even though plans for Red Notice 2 aren't official, the film directly sets up another movie. The film's ending jumps 6 months forward after Hartley and Black double-cross Booth and shows the 2 of them enjoying life together. However, Booth then makes a surprise return to tell them that he ratted them out to Interpol, causing their bank accounts to be frozen. As a result, he proposes that the 3 of them need to work together on an even bigger job that is now on his radar. While Hartley doesn't exactly want to team up with Booth again, Black manages to convince him to take the job, and the 3 of them go off for their next adventure, one that Red Notice 2 could fully explore. As of right now, Netflix hasn't announced any plans for a Red Notice sequel. However, reports are suggesting that a follow-up could already be in the works. In fact, the stars of the film have expressed an interest in teaming up again for a sequel should Netflix give them the official green light. Although considering how busy the stars of the film are, it would be interesting to see how quickly Netflix could put the sequel together. As we've seen with other big films such as Extraction and The Old Guard, it can take a bit of time for sequels to come together, especially when they feature some of the biggest and busiest stars around like Ryan Reynolds and The Rock. Since Netflix has yet to officially announce Red Notice 2, the sequel announcement will likely depend on how well the movie performs for the streaming service. And while it has received mostly negative reviews from critics, the audience response has been more favorable. Realistically though, the reviews shouldn't impact Netflix's decision on the sequel, as it will be a matter of how many Netflix subscribers check out the film. And based on the massive fan bases that Johnson, Gadot, and Reynolds have, Red Notice is widely expected to be one of Netflix's biggest movies ever. If the film is met with such a response, then Red Notice 2 should be officially announced sooner than later. Should the movie perform well on Netflix, we imagine Netflix will do everything it can to streamline the sequel. Still, going back to its reviews ahead of its Netflix release, the reviews for Red Notice have been decisively negative, with only 44% critic rating on Rotten Tomatoes. And although critical consensus doesn't always translate to a movie's box office or streaming success, this early response doesn't foretell well for what is reportedly Netflix's most expensive original production. With a budget of $200 million, Red Notice reviewers have largely been wondering what all that money was actually spent on. At first glance, the Red Notice film possesses many winning elements that theoretically should have worked, one being its blockbuster stars like Dwayne, Reynolds, and Gadot, who all fight to be the first to locate the glorified jeweled eggs around the world. However, while the movie was inspired by other popular heist movies, it ultimately lacks what made those films so successful. Many critics are quick to point out where Red Notice goes wrong, questioning how a movie with such popular actors and a tried and true formula could produce something so lifeless. It would likely have had better response if it took more risks, since the final product simply repeats many of the story beats that have been done before. Here's what some of the Red Notice reviews are saying. Quote, "Alas, writer-director Ross and Marshall Thunder just doesn't know when to quit. The winks, the nudges, the stunts, the surprises come in such a barrage that at some point the charm leaks out of Red Notice, leaving only exhaustion behind," end quote. Another critic pointed out how the film ultimately lost all of its propulsive drive and excitement of the film it takes inspiration from, since it was so focused on putting together all sorts of double crosses and false endings. In the end, these Red Notice reviews make it clear that the film is far more concerned with dazzling audiences with more of everything. More humor, more fast-paced action, and more star power, than with creating a compelling narrative. Inspired by other heist films and buddy comedies, Red Notice does nothing to stand out from what it imitates. While director Thurber has created other great action films with Johnson before, here it seemed that he didn't know how much was too much. And some may not have predicted, Johnson, Reynolds, and Gadot's charms oddly did not end up working together as well as many would have thought, despite how much the movie clearly depended on their chemistry. Either the plot is far too thin for even the lead's charisma to overcome, or the actors have simply grown tired of playing the same old role. Either way, it seems that Red Notice didn't get the response that it was hoping for. With that said, that's gonna wrap up this video. What are your thoughts on the movie? Did you check it out? Let us know in the comments.